The win total predictions are out. What a fall for the Clippers and the chase for Cooper Flag. Can a surprise team get into the mix? It's right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast. So great to have you here as a subscriber, as a YouTube viewer, as a YouTube commenter. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen every day. On Wednesdays, we're your regular Locked On NBA crew. I'm John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madisoon, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast on Twitter at NolaJake.
Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase of last-minute tickets. Terms apply. Just use the Game Time app to get Red Sox tickets. So, fun. Today's show also, basically, Jake, FanDuel, all about FanDuel, who's out with their over-unders for this season. We're going to spend the whole show talking about over-unders and playing our favorite game of real or fake. Which of these are real? Which of these are fake? Which of these teams are getting into the race for Cooper Flag? This is going to be a potentially franchise-altering draft coming up.
It is. So I love when the win totals come out because it's like our first somewhat like kind of reality check of the offseason. Like maybe you talked yourself into your favorite team having done a good job, and then Vegas comes in and like slaps you alongside the face and is like, absolutely not here. We'll get into some that are like kind of confusing. Some we think are like dead on. Some are like, wait, what's going on here? It's going to be fun.
It is fun because let's get into the biggest move of the summer was Paul George leaving the Clippers, going to Philadelphia. And we'll get into Philadelphia later, but they are sitting there fourth overall with 52.5 wins is their projected win total. Third best in the East. That's, so the Sixers, nice job. The Clippers, though, 40.5 at FanDuel as a win total. And just for reference, the Lakers are at 43.5. So let's play real or fake here. Real or fake, the Lakers are going to be better than the Clippers this season.
So I actually think this is real. I think this is very real for these two teams. Now, it might be like 41 wins versus 40 wins. So like they're better than the Clippers. Would you call them better than most of the league? It's all relative here, right? Look, congrats to the Clippers. This is like the definition of reaping what you sow. They put out that statement before Paul George left of being like, we're scared of the second apron. We don't want to do it. Or you could have just given Paul George an extra year and not dropped from 51 wins to an over-under of 40.5, a 10-win difference. All that flexibility that you have of not being in the second apron isn't going to find those 10 wins somewhere. So losing Paul George was so big because there's just no way you were going to replace it, and the flexibility doesn't matter if it doesn't lead to more wins. This one's my favorite one because it just makes me kind of laugh with a front office overthinking the new collective bargaining agreement here. Look, the Lakers are worse than they were a year ago. I don't doubt that, but I think the Clippers are in line for a big fall. They basically need Kawhi Leonard at this point to play 82 games, and that's certainly not going to happen. So I do think that this one's like right on both of them, that the Lakers, even if I don't think the Lakers are particularly good, are going to be better than the Clippers.
The Clippers, here's a list of the moves that they made. Obviously, Paul George leaves. Mason Plumlee, Daniel Tice, Russell Westbrook all out. Mo Bamba, Nick Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., and Chris Dunn in. Yeah, that doesn't exactly, unless Kevin Porter Jr. Comes back, and I'm not exactly thrilled with this, but if he comes back and can play, that's a hell of a thing to ask him to be able to do. And you're leaning on James Harden. You're leaning, and as the years pile up, the games during which Harden is good, they don't pile up. So yeah, this is pretty funny. It is a very reap what you sow moment because they overcorrected, and what a wild time to overcorrect because you're opening a new building. You've left the Staples / crypto, whatever arena. You've built your own arena. You got that big wall of fans. This is a big moment for the Clippers, and you let your best player, basically because of health, you let him go. Are they banking too much on Kawhi having a mostly somewhat healthy regular season? Are they banking on him kind of being able to come back and have that regular season?
I mean, even if he is, right, it's the Western Conference. It's brutal right now, right? Like, it's less about Kawhi Leonard to me than, you can sign 8 million guys and it's not going to equal the production of one Paul George, right? Like, that's kind of the issue here to me. It's just they got worse. Like, they had one of the worst off seasons, in my opinion, here. Again, I think overthinking the second apron of like, oh my God, we're not going to, one of our future draft picks is going to be frozen. Who cares when you're at least being competitive and making the playoffs, which you're not going to potentially do this season here. It's also reap what you sow for the Lakers, right? Like they haven't done anything.
100%.
They haven't done a thing. Like they value, that Lakers like excellence, right? Like their kind of advantages, they're the Lakers. They're in Los Angeles. It's that simple. It hasn't kind of worked that way for a couple of years now. And to try and maximize LeBron James, right? Drafting Bronny's a nice story, and we talked about it in last week's show, but they could really use that roster spot. They could have used a guy like Gary Trent Jr., right? And because they wanted to take care of LeBron, which I don't think is necessarily the wrong thing, their win total has gone down from what their number was last year, and they got a pretty healthy season from LeBron James, and now he's playing in the Olympics. There's going to be more wear on him. We keep saying this every year, and he proves everyone wrong in terms of injuries and things like that. But one year he's going to slow down. And if it's this year, that 43.5 might actually be kind of high for this team currently. Again, the West is brutal.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's fake that the Clippers. I don't disagree with anything you said about the Clippers. I just think the Lakers will be worse.
That's fair.
What the Clippers are going to be. I just don't. I think the 43.5 is high for the Lakers. I mean, it puts them above 500, and I just, with no extra additions, you are asking a lot from LeBron. It's just not going to be the same. I don't expect it to be the same. I feel like they are due for a few game drop. So they were 47-35. I don't think they're going to be a 500 team, and that could push them down. Let's take a quick look at the West, because according to the win totals, we've got OKC 1, Minnesota 2, Denver 3. They're Minnesota, Denver separated by a game, so that's 3. The Mavs are 4. The Kings are 5. Let's stop there. The Kings 5th at 46.5. Real or fake on that?
I'm gonna go real. I think. That's the amount of wins they basically had last season. They added DeMar DeRozan. I have questions about his fit with that team, but overall, like, they didn't get worse, in my opinion, right? They probably slightly improved from what Harrison Barnes was giving them. I think they're, to me, that move is like a slight increase to them, which keeps them kind of about where they were. They just have to hope they don't play the Pelicans in a play-in game or in the playoffs, because they were 0 for 6 last year, by the way.
So the Kings are at 5 here. They're tied with the Suns at 46.5. The Grizzlies are at 47.5. Put a pin in that one. According to FanDuel, the Pelicans are at 45.5. So they're right there with the Kings. So, or they're right there below the Kings, I should say. There's a jumbled mess of Kings, Suns, Grizzlies, Pelicans, and then a drop off, but then Lakers and Clippers. Warriors and Rockets are in there at 43.5. So the Warriors, Rockets would be the last of the play-in. The Clippers, according to these win totals, are out and a lottery team, which, wow. The Grizzlies are the interesting one, because that's the biggest jump, because it's the Ja Morant bump. He missed almost the entire season. They had the biggest rash of injuries I've ever seen a team have, really. 27 wins last season. FanDuel has the Grizzlies at 47.5 wins. That with Ja Morant and Marcus Smart, the team that they tried to get together, those guys, I can see them jumping. I think I can see them jumping past the Kings and jumping past the Suns.
Yeah, look, when they were last healthy, they had 51 wins. So jumping them up with John Morant healthy and, hopefully a little bit more mature, I think is going to go a really long way for them. They also added Zach Edey, right? Like that was the biggest glaring hole on that team was the center position and needing someone. And they added someone who might not be elite at that position, but has elite size and shot blocking ability and kind of is like an NBA player from day one, it feels like. That team's interesting. Think about it. You've got John Morant, Marcus Smart. You can run Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. down low, which is kind of fun. Like they're going to be a very intriguing team to watch. So them being kind of up there, like I could see them exceeding that number.
Yeah, I can see. I'm going to put the Grizz above Sacramento. I do think there's something real about the fit issue with DeMar DeRozan. The Suns at 46.5 before we wrap up this segment is such a weird number. Who the hell knows what Phoenix is going to be?
Yeah, that's just one of those like WTF. Like I have no clue.
Stay away from Phoenix. I'm not putting anything on Phoenix. Like when I open up the FanDuel app, no, I'm not touching that one because it could go. They could win 50. They could win 40. They could. Who knows with those guys? So, but the story of the West is the Clippers, and if they do fall, if the Clippers fall out of the playoffs entirely, what a disaster! What a disaster! And when again opening up your own building and missing the playoffs right away, a very, very on brand historically for the Clippers. I will just put it that way. It's very old school Clippers. Let's talk about, we'll save the East for last because I don't think there are any questions really about the East. Let's get into the tanking race. Let's get into the Cooper
I love
flag
this
race
one
because
this is the most interesting to me.
This might be the biggest race of the year this summer. So let's talk about that when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The Game Time app is where to go for Major League Baseball tickets because they're an authorized ticket marketplace. Like I said, just opened it up and said, oh, these are a good deal on Red Sox tickets. I'm in Boston. Let's go spend my summer watching a little bit of Red Sox baseball. It was very simple. Open up the app. They've got killer last minute deals, 60% off if you buy last minute tickets for not just sports, not just Major League Baseball, but concerts, comedy, theater. You can get flash deals, exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game, ahead of the event. You can pick the section. They call that a zone deal, and they pick the seats for you. You can save a few extra bucks that way. You open up the app, you toggle the all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. You click on the view from the seat, and you get a panoramic view from the seat before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee means you get 110% of the difference if you find that same ticket somewhere else for less. So take the guesswork out of buying these last minute tickets, buying Major League Baseball tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, the name of this podcast, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on the YouTube channel and the Amazon Free Fire TV channels app. Real talk, shows like this one, real debates, real, just real talk, man, and not the fake screaming at each other, which you're going to hear a lot of teams do when it comes to what these teams with the at the bottom, Jake, will be doing for Cooper Flag. So let's run back through these FanDuel odds and go from the bottom up. Brooklyn at 19.5, Portland 21.5, Wizards 22.5, Pistons 25.5, Bulls 27.5, Jazz 27.5, Hornets 29.5. Those are all your below 30 teams. So that's 7 teams, and then you've got Raptors, Spurs, and Hawks at 34.5. So let's throw your let's turn your mic on first, and let's get your take here on let's get your take here on these tanking teams. Feels like the Hawks are right there on the edge at 34.5 wins, just below the Clippers, by the way. 34.5 wins. That could be, if we're talking real or fake, 34.5 wins might be fake if they decide like, you know what are we playing for this year?
So they're the most interesting one out of all of these numbers to me, because 34.5 wins for them means you should just outright tank, right? Like trade Trae Young, get whatever you can for him, and just blow it all up and be bad. But here's the thing with that. They don't own their future draft picks. The picks are all owed to the San Antonio Spurs from the DeJounte Murray trade.
Man.
And Murray, by the way, is not on that team anymore. He's here in New Orleans. They have two options, because as they're constructed, like, they can't keep doing what they're doing. Yes, Trae Young and Murray didn't work together for the past 2 seasons, and when both those guys were on the court, they were a net negative. But this is not an addition by subtraction kind of move, because even before that, the Hawks had one good year that was kind of fluky on a run to the Eastern Conference Finals, and have been basically a play-in tournament team at best since then. So you have two options, right? This is why I don't like this number, and I have no idea what it might be. Above it, it might be below it. Below it, you could trade Trae Young and just tank. But because you don't own your future draft picks, should you do that, right? Like, even if they're bad and they win 8 games, that's a San Antonio pick. So their best Trae Young move is to trade Trae Young to San Antonio and get their own picks back. I don't know if San Antonio wants to do that. What's more likely, or what they should be trying to do, is use any other pick they have and the picks that they acquired from the Pelicans in that DeJounte Murray trade to go get someone to put alongside Trae Young and be better, because they have no reason to be bad again, because they don't own their own draft picks. So just push all of your chips in, right? Like literally all the future draft picks, whatever salary you can cobble together, and go try and be better. And to me, that kind of indicates over on this number, just because they can't, if they're worse than that, that's such bad news for them.
They're in a pickle. They are in a pickle because everything you said screams Trae Young buy, but unless the Spurs, and if you're the Spurs, let's even say, Trae Young, we've got Wemby. He's gonna be able to erase any mistake Trae Young makes. We're not so worried about his lack of defense. We've got a good defensive team behind him. We'll make it work. You still have all the leverage. You don't have to trade for Trae Young. There are other places you can go. Hell, Tyus Jones is still out there and available, right? So why not just go get him and
reunite
find a way,
the brothers here?
Yeah, right. So go ahead and do something different. You don't have to give up your first round pick. You don't have to sit there and tell the Hawks, we'll give up our chance at Cooper Flag, because let's look at this realistically. Where are the Hawks going to go to get help? I don't think they're going to be able to go get help either.
They didn't want Brandon Ingram from New Orleans, right? Like that was the natural move, and they didn't want it.
So they're stuck. And if they are actually at 34.5 wins, that puts them below. It's kind of a weird place. So they're a play-in team at 36 wins. They won the lottery, by the way. And this is what makes it interesting. Of course, they could do it again. Didn't like Orlando win it 2 years in a row way back when? That's like back in the Penny Hardaway days, where they were still good, but they were better.
They did, but it's an unprotected pick to the Spurs.
That's right. You just said that, and I completely forget it.
So do you know how hilarious that would be?
But that's my point. But that was the point I was trying to make. Like even if they are there, like they're not in a spot where are they going to climb to? Are they going to be 10 wins better? 46 wins was the Miami Heat last year, and still a play-in tournament team. So even if you get better, even if you cash in, you're not getting that much better, right? So
I agree.
The Spurs are going to be sitting here like, no, we are not going to give you your pick back, because you're right there in prime territory. And beyond Cooper Flag, this is supposed to be a pretty good draft overall anyway. So the Hawks are absolutely just stuck. They're stuck.
It's purgatory. It's like the worst spot to be in here.
They got nowhere to go. And the Spurs are just geniuses for the move that they made. They timed that out perfectly. So let's get down to the bottom. The Hawks are a team to watch who knows what the hell they're going to do. The Spurs are right there at 36.5 wins too. So they might be in the mix for Cooper Flag themselves.
I'd take the over there.
Okay.
Wemby's
You
so
think Wemby
good.
yeah. So the Nets, I know you had a problem with the Nets at 19. Let's go right to the bottom.
It's way too high. It's way too high. 19 and a half is too high for this.
Just for reference, other sportsbook, unnamed non-FanDuel sportsbook, we all are all FanDuel over here. Everybody has the Nets at 19 and a half.
So sure. They're going to blow that team up even more and trade more pieces away eventually because they have no reason to be good, right? They unlike the Hawks, actually own their own draft picks. They got him back from the Houston Rockets, right? Like that's a significant thing for them. Like if I were a Nets fan, this is one of those years where I'm like, I want all the losses here. Look, you're not guaranteed anything in the lottery, but when you kind of look at some of these bottom teams, who knows what the Wizards are going to be pretty bad. I think the Pistons are going to be better than they were a year ago, I think, even if it's incrementally. You have to at least position yourself into being one of those bottom 4 teams to maximize your lottery odds here. And I think they know that. I think they realize that right now. And they're going to go through what seems to be maybe a fairly extensive rebuild. But I wouldn't be shocked if more pieces get traded later down the line because why not? If your over-under is set at 19 and a half wins, you may as well just sell that team off for as many parts as possible. And you look at their current roster, and it's pretty bad. You can move some of those other guys and get, even if it's pick swaps or things like that. Like, what's the point of trying to win 20 games here? Like, just lose more and make sure you get a good pick with your own draft pick, which is kind of important.
And why I think moving picks or moving players like you said is going to have to be how I don't think 19 and a half is too high because of the remaining bad teams. Again, Portland's next, but then Washington, Detroit, Chicago, then Utah, but then the Hornets and the Raptors, and then the Spurs and the Hawks. So that's a lot of teams in the East at the bottom. That's a lot of teams that they're all going to beat each other, which means some of these games where Brooklyn is maybe as good, like they're going to beat Washington, they're going to beat Detroit, they're going to beat Chicago one of these times, and all of those teams are going to be making moves, all trying to jockey for position to be down there at the bottom.
I mean, maybe though, right? Like Charlotte seems kind of desperate to make the playoffs and kind of like right the ship with LaMelo Ball a little bit and at least see what they have there. So like, I'm not convinced of that. Like Chicago's a weird one of like, what do they do? Their pick in this coming draft is top 10 protected. Otherwise it goes to the Spurs. So it's like some of these are interesting decisions. Like they should be bad, but Chicago has seemingly been like, we want to win games for the past couple of years.
I don't know what the hell the Chicago Bulls are. Well, what are they? Do they know? I don't know.
They should have a plan, but I don't think so.
It does not sound like it. Let's take a second here because let's look at the whole East and maybe that can kind of shed some clarity here on what the bottom of this is going to look like. Let's talk about that in just a second. FanDuel's over under for win totals here in the East. Obviously, the Celtics are at the top at 58.5. The top of the East looks like Celtics, Knicks, Sixers, and Bucks. That is pretty fairly the consensus. The Bucks at 50.5. It was a 50-win team, 49-win team this past season, so they're right at that same kind of mix. They made some improvements. We'll see if Doc Rivers with a whole year, a whole offseason can do anything, but that's still the top of the East. And I think no real we know that the Sixers are better. We know the Knicks are better. That's all great. Okay. That's going to be competing for the Eastern Conference Finals. In that next bunch, Orlando's been making moves. They've internal improvement plus, a couple of nice moves this summer. The Cavs kept Donovan Mitchell. They work things out with a couple other players. They're bringing back mostly the same guys. So that's at 47.5. Those two teams are equal. So that's your 5-6. Pacers in there at that same number at 7, and then the Heat there at 8. Hawks. So I don't have any dispute. I think that's pretty much your Eastern Conference, right? Like, do you have any issues with the Eastern Conference there?
No, not really. Like, I think Cleveland is still a little TBD. They're hoping a new head coach and Kenny Atkinson is going to really elevate them while keeping the same group together. I think that'll work for a little bit, and then we'll kind of know early on, and maybe they make a big move at the trade deadline. We'll end up seeing what could happen there. But it's like those teams that, maybe realize they're not good enough and they decide to kind of go all in. And they're one. I think Orlando has some flexibility to do some interesting things during the season too. But in general, I'm fine with all of this.
So if you're looking at a team like the Bulls, when we're looking at, do you make a jump? Do you not? Do you try to do something to make a jump? Making a jump into the first round against Celtics, Knicks, Sixers, or Bucks, is that appetizing at all in this draft? This is why I don't think you need to go into full tank mode, because the odds are smoothed out and the worst team isn't necessarily guaranteed or virtually guaranteed anything. So I still feel like the Bulls and that the Hornets are a weird kind of team. Like they did make some moves. They're not going to just go out there and try to lose. So they might make a little bit of a jump, but everybody else below that is just in full competition. The Raptors are another weird team. We got to throw the Raptors into this mix. What are the Raptors trying to do? Right? Like they have some good players, but they haven't fully committed to building around those players. What are the Raptors going to do? The Raptors on FanDuel are at 30.5 wins. And last season they were a 25 win team. So 6-game improvement, 5-game improvement is pretty good, but still not good enough. What are the Raptors doing?
Great. This is the question for a lot of these teams, right? I think Chicago, it's obvious, right? Like they should be bad. They should be bad. That's what they should be.
They should be trying to be bad.
Yeah, Charlotte, I can see trying to kind of build a winning culture with some of the young pieces they have, and they've got some there, right? Like that's definitely a thing. The LaMelo Ball is going to be more healthy than he's been in the past. Hopefully, that maybe elevates them a little bit. But like at best, they're a play-in tournament team. Chicago feels like there's just no hope, no future there, and they should really be trying to tank. The Raptors are kind of like a wild card in some of this, right? Masai Ujiri doesn't want to lose games. You question a little bit of, have they kind of realized where they are the past couple of seasons too, right? Holding on to some of their guys a little too long and trading them for like less than what you would have thought, with like OG Anunoby going to New York, and what was like a fair trade for both sides, but less than what they were really holding out for a year ago. So are they committed to going through a rebuild, or are they trying to retool and get back into contention? Like, I'm not really sure. I guess that's why I got to probably listen to Locked On Raptors or something like that.
That's right. I think in the end, Portland's probably going to end up being the worst team, and they're right there at 21.5 over under. I think I'm going to take the under on FanDuel on the Blazers. They are actively trying to be bad, so bad that people in Portland are calling me to ask me about Cooper Flag, because he's up here. He's playing. He's from Maine, so they're like, hey, we're really excited about this Cooper Flag kid. What can you tell us? Like, everybody in Portland is fully bought in to the tank. They do not want to win. If they actually hit 21.5 wins in Portland, I think Blazers fans would be upset. So I'm putting Portland down at the bottom. I think Brooklyn, unless they make some moves because of the East, is going to be above 19.5. The Wizards and Pistons, I don't know. Man, these teams,
they're going to be no bad, but like,
what a directionless group.
Yeah, the Pistons, at least, look, new blood in there, new head coach, new general manager trying to do some different things. We'll see. When we were planning out the show, you had a real interesting team in the East, though, that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, that's right. I'm glad you reminded me of that, because
you teased it in the beginning of the show, too. We should probably get there.
I completely forgot about this. The Miami Heat at 44.5 wins. Now, if they win 44.5, that's below what they were last year. They were 46-36. So let's say that's 44, 45. So 44, 45 wins, just above 500. That a play-in team again. You've got Jimmy Butler. There's questions about your relationship with Jimmy Butler. He says he wants to be in Miami, but things have been, Pat Riley's said some things and you're like, oh, interesting. Miami has an opportunity if they move Jimmy Butler. Like the teams that you're talking about that might want to make a jump, Jimmy Butler could be the team that helps one of these teams make that jump that they're looking to make. Miami can go, if they go under and go to 35 wins, 34 wins, and they drop out of the playoffs completely, can Miami jump into a quick single season, one season, just let's head into the tank real quick, see if we can get Cooper. If you nail it, you get Cooper Flag right away. It doesn't take that long for him. We just saw him have that great exhibition against Team USA. He looks like he's ready to play. He's not scared by the moment. Miami could be a dark horse if they could just get out of their own heads of Miami Heat culture. We don't do that kind of stuff. If you can just say, listen, for 1 year, we are going to do that stuff. We're going to drop down below 40 wins. We're going to see if we can catch lightning here. And then if you hit, boom, you're right back into the mix. Within a couple of years, you're right there in the top four probably again.
Yeah, I think that would be a smart move. Is they're just running out of things I think they can really truly do to improve the team. Let me ask you this though. Say you remove Jimmy Butler from that team. He played 60 games last year, right? Like how much worse are they? Right? Like what's the realistic, like he's missed some time, man, for him. Like that's kind of the thing.
This is the question. I actually think they're better in the regular season
without
Jimmy Butler. I think they're better in the regular season without Jimmy Butler, and not to say that that is a disrespectful thing to Jimmy Butler. Like they're better without him.
A little hot takey there. I'm going to give you this one.
But here's why. Because in the regular season he coasts. He's not playoff Jimmy. That's why playoff Jimmy is a thing, and not just Jimmy is a thing. Right? At his age, at this point, he coasts during the regular season, and they play slow. But Miami's strength is when they play fast. Bam Adebayo plays fast. Tyler Hero is better when they play fast. They're better forcing turnovers and jumping into transition and moving the ball, and that's where they're at their absolute best. When Jimmy's out there, he slows things down. They set their offense. Jimmy has to make the play, and it's not where they're their best. Now in the playoffs, that's the style of play in the playoffs, and that's why he does much better. Like if you could do like European soccer and like loan a player out and then get him back, like loan him out for the regular season, like then. But I just think that their style is better without him, and so if they would have to like maybe do a couple of other things, but either way, I do think it would benefit Miami to miss the playoffs because they're quick. Their turnaround could be really quick.
It would be, or even if they got bad and got a good first round pick, right? You can use that to flip it around and then all of a sudden get someone even better, which is what they like to do when they go star hunting here. They have their own draft pick. If it falls 1 through 14, it's lottery protected this coming year. So it makes sense for them to do that. It goes to OKC if it's 15 through 30. So like they're kind of incentivized to not be nearly as good this year.
The question is whether Spo and Pat Riley will want to do that. But again, this isn't exactly Atlanta Hawks purgatory, but they made that crazy run in the playoffs a couple seasons ago, but they did it as a play-in team, and they did it. Okay, they got their crazy outlier shooting. We know that. We don't have to relitigate all that stuff, but we can just acknowledge that was a crazy run. And doing that from the play-in is not the way to go. And they were back in the play-in this past season, and FanDuel has them at a win total that would put them back in the play-in this upcoming season. So why do you want to keep pushing for play-in and trying to win a couple of games just to face the top seed again? That is the question for the Miami Heat.
Yeah, because of heat culture would be why. But yeah, they need
Well,
to maybe
it's a
let
dumb
that
reason.
go for they need to let it go for a year.
All right. Well, that's the Miami Heat discussion. Let's see if the guys at Miami at Locked On Heat want to pick that up or whatever. You can go check them out there. Check out everybody's going to be talking on the Locked On Podcast Network about the over-unders on FanDuel. So check us all out. Make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On NBA podcast. On Wednesdays, we're your host, John Karalis here, host of Locked On Celtics on John_Karalis on Twitter.
I'm Jake Madisoon, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast on Twitter at NolaJake.
Share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On NBA podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.